Today I'm driving this. It's a Fiat 500. What's special about it? Well, it's not electric. It's amazing, I know. I'll go into more detail about how it moves later. But for now, let's turn it on. And we have to turn it on using this key thing here. You can hear that noise. So that noise is the engine. And actually, it's a marvel of engineering, and I'll show you later. Thousands of little explosions, millions in fact, are going on in front of this car. And that's what makes it move. It's a pretty amazing thing. And it actually sounds a bit dangerous, but it's nothing really to worry about. There are only 15,000 car fires a year. So all these little explosions are caused by introducing a fuel, petrol or diesel, petrol in this case, introducing that into the engine. That creates these little, well, a spark happens, that creates an explosion, and it moves pistons, which moves the car. So inside here is the engine. It's what makes the car move. It's a very rattly, noisy thing. Extremely complicated, amazing really how it works. And that's not something I'm going to go into now. The problem is, it's very smelly. The complexity means that it's expensive if anything goes wrong. And yeah, it really stinks. You can get internal combustion engine cars that have a automatic gearbox, and that's more similar to an electric car, but in this one it's manual. So I have to do kind of a strange lot of things really to make it move. There's something called a clutch, and I have to put this clutch down and then I move into gear. So first gear is obviously the first one that I'll want. This goes all the way up to 5, some cars that goes up to 6, and all it does is it means that you can get to a different speed. So it's a 5-speed gearbox. So once I've done that, I have to apply some pressure on the accelerator, and while I'm pushing down on the accelerator, I'm lifting up with the clutch. And at some point, it's called the biting point, we start to move. Pretty amazing, isn't it? Now, something you'll notice is it's quite noisy compared to an electric car. But it's fine, when you're driving along, you can just put on the radio or something instead, and that'll drown out the noise. So the first obstacle we get to is a hill, and I'm in second gear and it's always really struggling. It's shaking, no, it wants to go into first gear. And then you have to make sure you change into the next gear and don't roll back too much, because there could be a car behind you. So this all takes a little bit of practice. And if you're just used to driving an electric car, you'll have to retake your test and do it for manual, a manual gearbox like this one. Okay, so the fuel gauge is quite low, so I'm going to go get some petrol. Now I don't know where I am at the moment. I don't know where the nearest petrol station is, so I'm going to have to look on an app, perhaps Google Maps or Waze or Apple Maps, to find the nearest petrol station. So we'll do that and then we'll head there now. So this petrol that has to go in the car, you may be wondering what happens with that after it's been burnt effectively. Well, it comes out the back of the car in the exhaust pipe. It's called an exhaust pipe. If you're burning all that fuel at the front, then obviously something has to come out, and it comes out of there. Lots of really nasty, toxic particulates, and we don't want to breathe that in. Frankly, if I stay here too long, I'll probably die. It does mean it goes up into the atmosphere, and it's really not very good. So bear that in mind if you're thinking of buying a petrol or diesel car. The ride in this particular car, this Fiat 500, is quite a basic car. So it's a little bit bumpy, it's not quite as luxurious as some other cars around, but it's quite fun. One of the things that takes a bit of getting used to is when you're driving a combustion engine car, there's no regen like there is on an electric car. So when you lift up the accelerator, it just carries on going with momentum, and it doesn't slow you down at all. So it feels a tiny bit scary, I would say. It feels like the car is running away from you. You don't feel like you've got quite as much control in that respect as you would with an electric car. And of course, the other problem is that it means that you're not actually getting any energy back. So if you do go down a hill, you're just losing all of that energy that you put into it going up. With an electric car, you at least get some of that back. Which is why electric cars, or one of the reasons electric cars are just so efficient. So the ride in a car like this feels quite juddery. And it's nowhere near as relaxing as an electric car. The changing of the gear and the various noises it is making, it feels quite rattly, and it feels, what's a good word for it? It feels rubbish. Changing gears feels a bit backwards, you know. It's an interesting way of moving the car, but I don't like it as much as an automatic gearbox, or even better, the electric. So you may be wondering how much a car like this costs. Well, this one new is about, well, they start at about £11,000, and you can obviously add options and get better versions. This was about £15,000 new. An electric version, of course, costs much more than that, so electric version is several £1,000s more expensive. So the whole ride and experience doesn't feel as smooth as an electric car. It's just a tiny bit more, I would say, stressful, in fact, to drive it. It's not as relaxing at all. You can feel a little bit like a rally driver, I suppose, driving one of these, but it's very clunky, and I prefer the smoothness. The fuel we have to use is very expensive. So electricity is very cheap. So fully charging an electric Fiat 500 would cost you something in the region of probably £4 or something like that, depending on which energy supply you have. Whereas petrol is very expensive, so filling up with the petrol costs probably about 4 times as much. Yes, the benefit is that petrol cars, they do make you go further. You've got a better range with it. But most people's journeys don't tend to be that big, and especially in a small car like this. So if this car does 400 miles on a full tank of petrol, the electric car version only gets you about 150 miles, for instance, which doesn't sound like much, but most of us just don't drive that much anyway. Now, the other problem with a car that's as complex as this, in terms of the engine in the front, is that it's more likely to go wrong than an electric car. Electric cars are very simple in comparison. You've got 4 wheels, a motor, and a very big battery. A car like this is far more complicated. And you've got so many moving parts, thousands and thousands of moving parts, compared to something like 20 moving parts on an electric car. Now, the problem with all those moving parts is that there is more chance of things going wrong. And if something goes wrong, it's more expensive to fix with a car like this. And car dealers want you to do lots of regular services because they make a lot of money out of it. Now, this is quite a basic model, this car, so I don't have a sat-nav, so I'm just hoping I find the petrol station. I'm also hoping that once I get there, I can fill up quickly, because there could be a few people using the pumps, and then I'd have to wait a little bit. Okay, good, so I found the petrol station. Hopefully I've chosen the right side to put the petrol in. So the petrol station is a festival of smells. Hopefully you like the smell of petrol or diesel. Actually, I like the smell of petrol, funnily enough, but make sure you don't smoke near it, because you might explode. So with some pumps you can pay at the kiosk inside, and some you can pay at the pump. Luckily this was pay at the pump, so that makes it much easier. So that was £15 to get me up to 3/4 of the tank. I don't know what that means in terms of range, because it doesn't tell me what the range is in this car, but more expensive cars do. But it's a bit of an unpleasant process. I mean, it's far nicer just to recharge at home. So just bear that in mind. If you're deciding to get a petrol car, you have to charge at these petrol stations. Everyone used to electric cars can obviously just wake up in the morning to a charged battery. If they've got a driveway anyway. So petrol stations are a strange thing. You have to go there and breathe in all that smell. And yes, very expensive. But what else can you do? Because no one has petrol or diesel filling stations at home, do they? So let's just recap then. So after spending some time with a petrol car like this, it makes me wonder why anyone would choose to get one of these. They're noisy, they're clunky, they're harder to drive, they're not as relaxing to drive. They cost more to refuel. More things can go wrong with them because of the complexity involved with the engine. And yes, they are cheaper to buy, but they do depreciate as well. So all in all, I don't think petrol cars like this have a future. I think it will be a niche for maybe some hobbyists will like to drive these around. But for the rest of us, I think electric cars make so much more sense. But it's been fun to drive this around today and see what it's like on the other side. But for me, it's got to be an electric. Okay, thanks for watching, and do subscribe and press the bell icon to be notified of other videos, and I'll catch you later. Bye for now. Oh, fuck, I stalled.